That's it. We are live. We've come on a little bit earlier today with Maria Wheatley. Today is the 29th of January, Tuesday the 29th of January 2019. First of all, I thought we were going to have another microphone. Oh my goodness, my live feed's on. Hang on a second. I don't do that very often. I really hate that. Sorry, that's it. It's gone now. What was I saying? Oh yes, I thought we were going to have another microphone problem because Maria couldn't get on, or she started going, her microphone went funny and then she came back. So that's really great. And Costa was actually on the hangout when the sirens went off in the building he lives in. So we had to vacate, and we're hoping that he's going to join us back. And I don't know where Patricia is, but she's been having quite a lot of internet problems lately. So it's just me and you, Maria.
Yes, well, thanks for having me back, Karen.
Absolute pleasure. And well, always lots to talk about. A few things, because obviously you've come on here today to talk about your new book, The Rollright Ring Circle, which is a full stone circle near Oxford. But I just thought maybe do a few things before we get into your book.
Sure.
I started noticing, I'm not like you, Maria, at all, but I'm a bit of a detective. You know, I keep looking at things and whatever. And I just have this real thing about the Tor being a church now. I think it was always a tower. I don't think they could have fit a church on there. And then I was looking at the way the clouds came in. If you could imagine that that's water, I suddenly thought, well, where are they sailing from? Because there wouldn't have been any land. Because that hill is not that high, but it's still high, and the land is so low between it. If there was any water on it, there would be no houses to sail from. So I thought that was making me think. Then I went to Donington Castle up the road here, a little castle, although it looks like it's a church size really. And I noticed that the ground looked a bit like a starfall, and thank goodness somebody had already done it. They'd done this cinematography of a 360 degree, and you can see that the little castle, whatever it is on a star fort. So I thought that was really great. And then I started looking into castles. I'm not saying all castles. Hey, there's Costa. He's back. 1 second, Costa. We'll get to you in a second. Yeah, then I noticed that a lot of the castles, like Windsor Castle, Arundel Castle, Warwick Castle, they all had pyramids in them, little mounds like Silbury Hill in them. And some of them are on star forts, like Dover Castle has a pyramid and it's on a star fort. So it's like, woo! Just thought that was quite incredible.
I can't hear you.
Hello?
I think that's Costa coming in. Hi.
Hi, Costa. Hang on, I'll write him a message. See, all these technical things. So what do you make of that, Maria?
Well, yes, it's long been known that certain places, whether they're kind of top public schools, they're also associated with mounds that, you know, generate their own form of energy. So it's like having an energy accumulator around.
Oh. So they knew more than we did, didn't they? Even in those days.
Oh, absolutely. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I haven't seen all that before, Maria. And it was like I went on this quest last week, and the week before it was a quest, and I was like, wow, they're everywhere. We've probably got more pyramids than everybody else.
We certainly do have, you know, a lot of mounds. And when you look at the structure of Silbury Hill, that is a 7-stepped chalk pyramid, as we know. And quite a few of the mounds are very sort of similar. And surrounding Stonehenge alone, at one time, back in the Bronze Age, there was 800 mounds surrounding Stonehenge.
And the star forts, that castle's built on top of it. So the star forts came first before castles. But I noticed at Donington, they're not round. They've actually got flat sides. I just study, they've all sort of, most things are turrets of one kind, whether they're towers or circles. And they all seem to be built round all these sort of mounds, pyramids. It just blew my mind. I wasn't expecting to... Hey, Costa?
Hi. Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't hear you before. Is it okay now?
It's
Yeah.
okay. I was just telling Maria in the chat room that you got the dee-dee-dee-dee and you had to leave.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
False alarm. False alarm. Yeah.
Oh
Don't
gosh.
worry. Don't worry. Yeah. So how are you, Maria? Everything all right?
Yes, I'm very well, thanks, Costa. And yes, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show again.
Yeah, welcome. You're welcome. Nice to hear you.
1 second then, because Costa's got a question. He's going to ask it now. But Maria, why isn't it everybody else seems to connect these mounds then? Like it's a bit like it's like I never saw them before, but they're there. Why don't they connect them then? They don't want to, do they?
Well, but no, I don't think so. I think, there's a lot of kind of hidden mysteries in the landscape that, people like yourself that are switched on, you go and look at and you begin to understand them a little bit more and make a kind of connection with them and understand their roles, basically. So I think it's down to good research, Karen, and getting the information out and questioning all of the time is such a good way forward.
I promise you. I've done some videos. I was a bit wowed. I went to Lithuania. I didn't see the same thing there, although there aren't so many videos, but I didn't see loads of mounds there or people even seeing them, but here now I look at something, it's got a mound in it.
You're seeing them everywhere now. It's a bit like a four-leaf clovers. Once you've seen one, you can still see them all.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
yeah, sure.
carry on. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's fine.
I'm just like, well, I'm a bit gobsmacked, to be honest. But Costa. Where's he gone? You got to unmute yourself, Costa.
Appreciate.
Yeah, you had a question. Costa's the person that went to see you, Maria, in Glastonbury. Carry on, Costa.
Yeah, I saw you in the summer in the Glastonbury Symposium. And I remember you were saying something about making a DNA test of the elongated skull you found in Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. I mean, I have applied to go to see some more skulls and, ask for a DNA analysis. But unfortunately, the ones in Oxford, the department, Cambridge has a section as well, but this particular one would have been done in Oxford. The whole department, when I asked, isn't open. It's having some kind of refurbishment, would you believe, until sort of February time. So I've applied. It's very convenient, or make of that what you will. But I have applied, so I will, as soon as the department opens, I will be in there trying to ask these questions and trying to get the DNA sample done. That's my objective, and I hope that comes about, because the story does need to be told, and nobody else is really looking into it, because the archaeologists aren't really concerned about it. You think they would be, but they're not at all. They're more kind of getting excited by a little pottery shard that they find.
Yeah, so if it happens, and I'm sure it will, I feel positive about this. What can you find afterwards? Are you going to test with other DNA samples? What does it show exactly?
Well, it will show through DNA or isotopes. It depends which one will be permitted. But either way, you'll be able to get where that person was either born, some kind of lineage, or if it was oxygen isotopes taken from the enamel of their teeth, and the Neolithic Queen of Stonehenge certainly has a lot of teeth to take an isotope from. Yeah. The skull may be slightly damaged because it was glued together in the Victorian era, because it got broken in a railway journey, unfortunately. So they could quite rightly argue that that's contaminated material. But from the teeth, you'd instantly be able to analyze where she grew up, basically, what part of the country or the continent, etc. If that transpires.
And the lineage. Wow, that's really important.
Well, because once you have one DNA, and it was permitted, and you did another one close by, because I think she had a brother, and I think they were a ruling family. Because I found another long barrow that was dedicated to just one person, just like hers, which is unprecedented. Normally, long barrows are communal, and lots of people go inside them, so to speak, or burial deposits like the skulls and the long bones. So I think I may have found the relatives, which is going to come out in a forthcoming book all about the long skull people and their legacy in the UK and Europe.
Wow. Yeah, that's great news.
Thank you, Maria. Anyway, because we need more people like you to check these things too. Can I ask you something else as well? I was looking up Highclere because it's a castle and it's not very far from me, and I don't see how it got turned into a castle. Although the Houses of Parliament seemed to be there until they went off to London. All the politics happened there, and there was other things. But there was Henry Herbert. He found Tutankhamun's tomb, but I didn't find many pictures of it.
Really, I haven't been to Highclere Castle for many years. Actually, I remember going to some kind of fair they had there, or craft fair or something. It's again, it's quite interesting about stately homes and castles, about their location, because they all go to a particular design. I mean, just like you have certain energies at stone circles, the members of mystery schools and masons, etc., would look for certain design canons and place the stately home on that. And normally you've got types of earth energies there that allow the body to live longer because it's in a harmonic frequency. And the whole design about a stately home is finding the esoteric center of the landscape and placing the house in the middle. That's why you always have a long drive going up towards it. So they were really kind of putting always like a dome shape in as well, because the shape of a dome can enhance earth energies quite considerably, actually, because the dome shape itself generates a frequency. So they combined all of these elements to place in the stately homes.
Can I ask you something, Maria? In your mind, that I don't know if you've seen, but there's quite a lot of people doing about mud floods and just the ages of these houses. We can't believe that they just had horses and carts. I mean, even churches, organs, the whole thing. Like, these people, wow, they spent all this money on this fine things, and the people were dead poor. Doesn't kind of add up, does it? It must have been moving differently.
Well, so especially I think in antiquity, they were the bones and the analysis from round barrows and some from flat graves, because not everybody in the Bronze Age or Stonehenge era or Rollright era, was in a mound. But nonetheless, they were generally speaking healthy and dying of old age. And then, but archaeologists always turn around and say, no, the life expectancy was just 30. That was quite rare, actually, but they still spoon feed and drip feed this through the general public. The bones were very, sturdy. It showed signs of good health. Generally speaking, every now and again, no matter what culture is ruling, you will get, plagues and famines and that sort of thing. That's the cycle of life and civilization. But I think most people were quite healthy and living good lifestyles and living to a long age in antiquity, far more than when we look to the Victorian era and the etc. So yes, I think they had an excellent diet, very clean water, beautiful pure air.
Yes, Maria.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, I thought your microphone had gone. I thought, no, not mid-sentence. No, you're fine. Well, yeah. So, but do you still think we had horses and carts and things like that then? I just think things were different.
In what era, Karen?
All of them. To even understand pyramids, what they do, the whole thing. These people were far more advanced than we were.
Well, I mean, one idea about the pyramids, for example, is, you know, they are much older, and the new kingdom of Egypt came along and put their cartouche right in, and their pictures and their faces onto existing monuments, so they could have been much older. So the culture that looks like it was there for, you know, Luxor, it would be Ramesses. Ramesses is everywhere there, but it is researchers say that's because he put that onto an existing temple that was much older, which were much more of a high civilization.
Just asking, because obviously we're getting round to this Rollright circle, but there, not far from there, is the big white horse, isn't there, in Oxford? Well, in Oxfordshire. Those things would be brilliant to be seen from the air, wouldn't they?
Well, the intriguing thing about the white chalk hill figure of Uffington is that it can only truly be seen from the air.
Yeah. Why do you think that, just for people who don't know in the chat room, just obviously we've got Silbury Hill and Avebury and Stonehenge is in that part of the world, but just before, even here where I am in Oxfordshire, just next to me, county, but down to Wiltshire, a lot of white horses appear on the hills. I mean, I'm sure other places have got them, but that area's got loads of white horses, hasn't it?
Wiltshire does have a considerable amount of white horses, and just to say that in July, I think it's around July the 23rd this year, White Horse of Marlborough, which is my hometown, is going to be recut, actually, and there's going to be a bit of a ceremony, so anyone around this area can join in. But the White Horse of Uffington is of antiquity. The other white horses were cut in the Victorian era and are quite modern.
Right, I didn't know that.
So, for example, the Marlborough white horse that was cut by the Marlborough boys in the 19th century.
Right.
The Breton white horse of Westbury, that was originally a much older horse of antiquity, but they recut it in the opposite direction, and that's actually concrete painted white. The Westbury white horse, they didn't even refill it with chalk. And the Alton Barnes white horse and the Broadtown white horse, they are all Victorian, and the landowners had them cut. And same for the Carn white horse near Oldbury Castle. That's also a Victorian white horse.
Just for anybody that doesn't know, they're chalk on the ground horses, always horses. So yeah, it's very interesting, but best to be seen from the sky. But anyway, let's lead on to the Rollright ring circle.
Yes, the Rollright ring is a fascinating late Neolithic, that's the orthodox dating, stone circle, and it's a part of a much wider complex, actually. So quite close by you have an older monument called the Whispering Knights Long Barrow, the remnants of that. And across the road from the Rollright stone circle you have the Kingstone. So it's a kind of landscape that has an outlying standing stone and a stone circle and a long barrow. That's the whole complex there. And like I said, the long barrow predates the stone circle building phase by, you know, up to 1,000 years. And the Kingstone, which is the lone outlying stone, and the Whispering Knights are surrounded by Victorian railings. So you can't actually, like spiked black railings, you can't actually physically touch them, but you can enter the stone circle and, you know, interact with the energies there and touch the stones. I mean, the reason why the Kingstone was put behind bars, like it's in jail, is because Welsh drovers used to come along to fairs with their cattle, and they used to break off a little bit of the limestone, because unlike Avebury or Stonehenge, which is very hard sandstone, the Rollright ring is made up of limestone, which is a little bit softer and more pliable. So, but it is a wonderful place to go. You only have to pay £1 to an honesty box to enter the stone circle. And it has a wonderful lunar alignment to it, which says that, the people there were probably interested in the kind of feminine, the goddess, because the moon's always represented as a goddess figure. And you have a diamond-shaped stone at the avenue, and you have, which is always classified as a female stone. And to the other side, you have a male stone. You see this pairing everywhere. In Cumbria, you see it. Stonehenge with the blue stones, and at Avebury down the avenue, and in other parts of the complex. And they're
do all these circles and communities, like, did they all sort of meet each other, or is there separate like land between them? Just asking.
Oh, they were definitely interacting with one another and across the continent, because you find amber in the Bronze Age that came from Estonia, for example, trading jet with the northern part of Northumberland, and beads have been found from ancient Egypt. So, these were cosmopolitan people that were just like you and I, buying from different countries, exchanging ideas and things. They were kind of small communities, and they were moving cattle over vast distances, even over seas, just like we do today, like a ferry port. They had ferry ports. For example, on the south coast at Christchurch, that was a ferry port, and that trade would come all the way up to Stonehenge. These were a high civilization. And I think they were all linked because they share these common design features, like the diamond-shaped female stones and the male stones. And then at Rollright, these two, male and female pairing, are right at the avenue, the way that you should enter a stone circle proper. Because if you do it as the energy flows into the stone circle, you're in harmony with it. But hardly anyone enters a stone circle through the avenue anymore. They just enter it where the kind of path leads you to, which in reality, you just go over the other side, see two clumps of stone at Rollright. That's the avenue. And during midsummer, once every 18.61 years, you get the moon's metonic cycle. Just as the sun would be setting, this majestic, huge moon would have risen and been in alignment with the avenue. So that would have been a wonderful sight to behold. And to our ancestors, as many of your listeners will know, midsummer was seen by the Celtic Druids to be the time when the veil is thin between this world and the next. You can feel the energies, you can divine, use divination at those times of the year. So I feel that it was a goddess orientated society, but nonetheless, the direction that it faces, which is the southeast, also is in alignment with the rising sun at midwinter. So maybe it was about balance as well, the male and the female, and integrating those energies.
Just before it goes out, a couple of questions.
Sure.
Miami says, Maria, could you please explain the significance of the various pointed stars 5, 6, and 8, and what it means if they're inverted?
Well, as in sort of facing upside down?
I suppose that's just what they've put. Pointed star 5, 6, and 8.
Well, the 5-pointed star, it always represents the 5 elements, of the fifth one being spirit. You have water, air, fire, and earth. The fifth element is spirit. And it was always put up in a particular way with the point facing upwards. And the way you draw it would mean if it's going to invoke energy or be more protective. So the way that you draw these symbols, especially the 5-pointed star, means something. You have to draw a particular way, and it will add meaning to it. But in the 1960s, I think it was either 66 or remember, the Satanic Society inverted it, but it was never seen as an inverted symbol up until they became common after that time. So it's a really very positive, powerful very powerful symbol for protection. To a pagan, it's like the Christian cross, for example. And quite often, leis are laid out in a pentagram kind of shape. And some of the older Native American sites were not necessarily like a five-pointed pentacle, but like the Pentagon military establishment in America is that kind of five-pointed shape. It's a pentagon shape. Well, the designer of that military establishment in America lived next door to an ancient Native American site, although the Native Americans said they didn't build it. It was the Kings of Kings, identical in shape to the Pentagon. That's where the designer got the idea from. And the Native Americans who reused that site used to have their warriors initiated there. It's about spilling blood, and the whole symbolism went into the military Pentagon. Six-pointed star, don't honestly know what it means inverted, but as it stands, it's one of the symbols of the heart chakra, as well as being, really resonates a lot of karmic energy, the six-pointed star. And again, you get that layout of a six-pointed star if you use the first phase of Stonehenge and count round like 7. And if you keep counting round 7, you will come with that six-pointed star in the middle of the first phase of
Stonehenge. Maria, sorry, you went a bit faint then.
Oh yes, it's my Wi-Fi, because I'm looking at my router and it's just flashing away in the corner. So yes, I think all of these symbols are relevant to the cultures and us, today. That's for sure.
There's another question here for you as well. Vanya asked, can you ask, what do you think of Rory Duff's work on the Emperor's Dragon energy lines that are returning to Earth?
Yeah, well, it's very, very interesting. Some work on the lays and cosmic lays, and you've also got. I'm trying to think of the other chap, but there's a lot on Facebook that is very similar to Rory's. I think predated it. Gosh, it's a Hugo Cans. He does a very similar thing, and yes, it's all relevant today. But what we need to think about is the lays in our area, because we can always look to global lays. Galactic lays is becoming quite popular at the moment. But if we look at our own lays in our area, and it's very easy to do that, because you just get 5 or more ancient sites, and that could include manor houses, because we know they were laid out on lays, and churches that had previous pagan sites. And in your area, say you find 5 or more sites, go and work with that lay, clear it every now and again by pushing some white light into it, sprinkling some water, a little bit of salt in it. So I think it's as much as like looking to the wider picture of what's going on. We need to be custodians of the land again, because every community, even up until the 11th or 12th century, as recorded in Irish manuscripts and Welsh tales, people were the guardians of the land. We've lost that connection now. We are no longer the guardians of our own landscapes. So I try to galvanize people locally to do that, and especially in countries that haven't really started to do that, like America. America's got a complete disconnect with its system.
Thank you for that. I hope that's answered the question. Sorry, back to the stone circle.
Yes, Rollright. It's associated with myths and legends, for example. And one of the legends it's associated with is about a witch, and she turns a king, King Rollo, in all probability, into stone, and that's why you've got the king's stone, called a king's stone. This witch turned the king's men into the stone circle, that's the Rollright ring, and the Whispering Knights were the conspirators against the king. But if you've got any good at researching anything and you look to the first myth, then you find out that it wasn't about a witch at all. It was actually about a Saxon general telling another general, that you won't become the King of England and all of this, which is a poem that was associated with this witch. He won't become the King of England. And I just feel that that's very powerful in the disempowering the feminine part of Rollright. And like I said, it's a light for the moon, and you can't be a wise woman in the medieval times. You had to be a witch. You had to be burnt or ducked or whatever. And that myth is still at Rollright on one of the information notice boards, but it's wrong. And then the other thing that
was that notice board at Silbury Hill wrong as well?
Yeah, same old there. And also at Rollright, which I feel is quite upsetting, really, is that it says, the stones in myth can't be counted. Well, that's like any stone circle. They said that about Stonehenge, the Merry Maidens, and there's only 19 stones at the Merry Maidens. I don't know how you can count.
So how many stones does the Rollright one have then?
It's about 77. But some of them are in the ground, so how would you count one that you see half buried? Do you see what I mean? Normally in archaeology, that would be classed as like stone A or B. But on the notice board, it says you can't count the stones, and then you get to see children going around counting the stones. But then that instantly puts them into their left brain and not their right brain, which if they were in their right brain mode and not counting and using those beta brainwaves, they would really feel the energies there. So I always try to discourage people from counting the stones. Why use your left brain like that when you're in this amazing circular space? So
it's kind of special then, because it's a whole circle.
It's very powerful because it's a complete circle in shape, whereas stone circles that are famous, like Avebury and Stonehenge, no longer retain their circular shape. So they don't actually function like a stone circle proper. But the most complete stone circle in England is Swinside in Cumbria. It's got, out of its 64 original stones, there's still 55 of which are there. Because it's in a remote area of Cumbria and you have to walk there, you can't park your car and tumble out into the stone circle. That is so, so, so powerful. When I took a group to Swinside during the heat wave, but it was a kind of misty day in Cumbria, the country is having a heat wave. But it is what it is. And we met up there, and I said, we're going to enter the avenue like you should, like I described at Rollright. Always go through the avenue. You're flowing with the energy. And I said, you will feel heat coming off these stones because this is a stone circle with an intact avenue. The avenue at Rollright isn't intact. 2 stones are missing. We know that from looking at antiquarian pictures by John Aubrey and Williams Stukely from 1724, the latter. But at Swinside, when you walk into that avenue, I said, you're going to feel the heat, and you always get someone going, make a kind of grunty sound. And they felt the heat. The heat rises from a stone circle once it's so retained. And if those 2 stones were put up at Rollright, you'd have the same amount of heat being released, and it is a wonder to experience when you put your hands above it. The people were overwhelmed. They were going, oh my God, I didn't think it would be this warm. And that was on a kind of coolish day. It wasn't because the sun had heated up the stones in that Cumbrian stone circle. It's because that's the energy being released by the avenues, flowing energy coming in, and the shape of the circle. Because once you have the shape of a circle, it doesn't matter if you draw it on a piece of paper, of salt. The cultist would have a circle of salt or a stone circle. That shape alone, or a crop circle even, that shape alone starts to generate polarized, and by that I mean like positive and negative, concentric circles within it and without it that are very powerful. It's called form energy. Yeah. And that form energy, those polarized bands of positive and negative, they can aid in manifestation. That's why an occultist would put the salt circle down. Okay, you can say, yes, it's a symbol of eternity. It has no end, it has no beginning, but it's very powerful and it generates this energy. And it's great fun to douse, and anyone can douse form energy at a stone circle proper because it's so easy to do. So grab yourself a douse rod or bend hanger to make it look like an L shape. Stand with your back against the stone circle and just slowly, very slowly, walk forward, just with the dowsing rod pointing straight ahead and parallel to the ground. That's called search mode. And as soon as your dowsing rod hits that form energy, it'll go bang towards your body very, very fast. Leave it there. Don't touch it whatsoever, and just continue walking forward again. And as soon as it hits the next polarity circle, whoosh, it will go back, pointing straight ahead, back into search, and so on and so on. You'll probably get that about 7 times within the circle, and outside of the circle, you'll get it as well. It's very powerful. Now, if you want to work with the energies of a stone circle and you really interact with the energy, you find a strong band for you. One of those concentric circles, and you begin to see what it is you want for the future to aid manifestation. Yeah, that's how occultists use the stone circle. Or the salt circle. It's where you stand in it. That's the critical thing. You don't just stand in the middle. If you're a magician and you want to cast your magic, you find the concentric band circle rather. That's the most powerful. And I've been with people doing manifestation at Rollright, and I'd say, to be truthful, about 6 out of 10 works, and it works very, very well. But back in the 80s, there was the Dragon Project, led by a very prolific author called Paul Devereaux. And in the car park just outside, it was like a lay-by actually, just outside of the Rollright ring itself, they were parked up, and they were doing lots of different experiments at Rollright to do with magnetism, Geiger counters, and various other scientific experiments. And some of the teams, some of which were scientists, actually saw things manifest in front of them on the road. One was a massive black dog, which is normally associated with ley lines. They're the guardians of the leys, black dogs. It's been renowned for that. And John Michelle used to write a lot on the black dogs and ley mystery. And next time, another person saw a gypsy horse and cart manifest in front of them. So they nicknamed Spook Road, and that's renowned for weird manifestations.
You right, Maria?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So yes, we've got a lot going on at a place like Rollright. We've got form energy. Then. Sorry?
One of your favourites?
Well, yeah, I like. I do. I know, about the 80s onwards. So I've had a lot of trips to Rollright, but I think the Cumbrian stone circles are hard to beat. Like Castle Rig is surrounded by mountains. It's very beautiful. And like I say, Swinside's the most complete stone circle. And then you've got Long Meg. And it's so difficult. They're all so nice. Yeah. Rollright is one of my favourites, that's for sure.
You've obviously doused them all, haven't you?
Yes. I've been to, oh gosh, I don't know how many sites now. I haven't even thought about it. Yes, a lot of stone circles. Like I say, they're places of power where you can go and you can manifest, or you could get healing, because there's a lot of healing energies at places like Rollright, Swinside, Castlereagh, Stonehenge as well, and Avebury. And
that's the first time I saw you was at Avebury dowsing. You'd met these Australians. Do you remember which one I'm talking about or not? Because you've probably spoken to so many people.
Was that a guy called George? He's a very famous guy from Australia. I was with him once.
He was with his wife.
Yeah, that was him. That was George. I can't think of his surname, but he's very famous.
it's just you're who you are with what you know. So I didn't know, and I suddenly thought, what? There's different levels in the stones. Wow, it was about, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years, whenever it was. I was watching it, and it was you doing the dowsing.
Yeah, I mean, just recently I was on a TV show with Megan Fox, a very famous Hollywood actress and very beautiful Hollywood actress. Yeah, I was. Felt very privileged to be a part of the show. Legends of the Lost, I think it's called. But I was showing Megan, dousing the energy bands you're talking about, and these like little magnetic hotspots that you get in stone. They're very intriguing. They're generated by earth voltages, which I'll talk about in a moment. But anyway, I was with Megan there, and we were chatting away, and I was suggesting, that these are the frequencies, and she was going to the Pacelli Mountains, and we were talking about, the healing stones. The blue stones of Stonehenge have always been said to be healing since the 12th century, when Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote that in his book, The Histories of the Kings of Britain. So what makes it if you tap one blue stone with another, it kind of generates a ringing sound. Okay, it will make a noise. And some of the church bells of Wales were made of bluestone. They're that good acoustic sound. And she went to Bristol University to be rigged up with electrodes on the head and that sort of thing. You can picture that. And to see if the sound emissions of the bluestones were a healing frequency that would relax the brain in alpha waves. And bingo, it was. So they are healing stones. And you only have to tap them. You don't have to get the ringing noise, but that in itself is healing. So I think, the ancients were using stones in very, very different ways. So you could have had two pieces of blue stones, and I've demonstrated this. And if you I'm going to clap, if you put them together, and you're kind of doing that, and you're going round the body, you could be using the chakras or the 12 very sensitive healing places, according to the ancient druids, on the body, which were also like self-defense places you'd guard in Asian martial arts. Then you're healing the body through a very simple yet a technique that has been proved by Bristol University to be effective.
So, do you remember that film She?
No. Oh, did that have a very famous actress in it? Actually, I'm trying to think of. No, I don't know.
Do you remember the eternal flame? I don't mean that the stone circles are flame, but is it the same sort of thing? It's like they saw that it gave them eternalness, gave them health and vitality, and
well, absolutely. I mean, there are places that are absolutely good for our health. But you're mentioning flames that has actually been seen at a stone circle. Okay. Now, back in, I think it was about the 1920s or 30s. I think it was just either before the Second World War or maybe afterwards. So, don't quote the year. But there was a Major Menzies. He went to the Stanton Drew Stone Circle in Somerset. And the large stone circle there is the second largest stone circle in the world. It's second only to Avebury. It has a smaller stone circle of 8 stones that's related to Venus. And it has another smaller stone circle kind of on elevated ground, not far away. So you've got 3 stone circles, basically.
Maria, we're talking about like sizes. So who's got the biggest stone circle in the world then?
Avebury. Avebury's outer greater circle of standing stones.
That's the biggest one in the world.
Yeah, and then Stanton Drew is the second in England. Yeah, Stanton Drew is the second in the world. Yeah, then you have to start to say about Scotland could be the third with Bognor, or in England you could say it's Longmeg in Cumbria. Massive arenas that would have fitted thousands of people in.
Was that for a reason then? Time starts here, doesn't it? We're 0, or time starts from the UK. We seem to have more pyramids than anyone else that they're not talking about, and we've got the biggest stone circle in the world.
Yeah, the biggest stone circles in the world for sure. Yeah, but the large early stone circles, and they're the largest ones, they tended to get smaller and smaller to the latter Bronze Age. But the very larger ones, I think, were to literally put a lot of people in, and a lot of people sharing the same experiences. Because one thing I've noticed about taking people to stone circles is if you have a quiet moment and you just that meditative state, then people start to think similar things amongst themselves in their own headspace. So I think these stone circles were places where masses of people went and they shared a similar either healing or initiation ceremony, or higher consciousness was gained. Is very probable. Hello, Karen.
Yeah,
Hello?
I'm here. I was muted.
Right.
Yeah, it just makes me the biggest of. We're a little place with the biggest of everything. I just think that's quite amazing. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I was talking about, you want about flames and things. Well, at Stanton Drew, what this guy experienced was really quite phenomenal. He was in the army, military trained, so he made a note of the weather, the sky, etc. And it was a kind of grey, overcast day. And he was stood in the greater stone circle, and from the sky descended what he described as a spiral light coming down from the heavens and going around the stone circles there. And it was like a flame, like a light going all the way up the stones. And that really changed his life. And after that, he studied in China, Feng Shui, and tried to really understand and make sense of his experience. It's often been recorded by druids and things. They call it Wen fire. And Wen fire is a fire that burns cold. So I think there was no evidence ever of burning on those quartz stones. I would suspect that it would have been Wen fire.
We're looking at the ones that are left, Maria. How many do you think have been destroyed? I mean, I've been looking, obviously, like before Wheatley Castle, there was a palace there. He was the bishop of, oh my goodness, he was a bishop of, was it Salisbury? Wherever it was, he was a bishop, and he had a palace there, and then something, and then came Wheatley Castle, and then I went to Bowood House. You know where that is, don't you?
Yeah, it's just down the road.
So supposedly they knocked that house down because it cost too much money. But if you haven't got any money, you don't knock it down, do you? Just board it up. So they removed that house for a certain reason. Great big pillars on it. And actually, because they say the big house and the wing, it's just the wing. It might not be height, but width-wise, it was enormous compared to the big house. Much, much bigger than the big house. And then it said there, and I was just looking at it, it said, the scientist found oxygen there, and you think, well, it couldn't have just been a house then, could it? It had to be some kind of laboratory, and this was in 17, whatever it was. And then I found this article on the internet, which basically says that systematically for hundreds of years they've just been knocking down all these great big buildings and things. So my thing is it the same for the stone circles?
Oh, absolutely. That's why you can never have a definitive ley line map. It's impossible. You cannot know what the ancients were bringing down to earth and linking with heaven. It's impossible. Why? Because so many sites have been destroyed, and there's 900 surviving stone circles in the British Isles. Now, we know that even around small areas like Avebury and Stonehenge, there were sites were just taken away in recent times, some of them. So I suspect that there was probably 3 to 4 times. I think there were thousands of stone circles in the British Isles. And even if you look at for megalithic feature called dolmen, which is, like 2 standing stones with a stone on top, a bit like the great trilithons of Stonehenge, for example. And if you look for the capital, the dolmen capital of the world, containing the most dolmens, then you go to Korea, where there was 45,000 dolmens.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. Korea. Have you been to Menorca? There's hundreds on there as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's a kind of high civilization of the ancient world there. And if you go to Sardinia, which I've been to and Dows, you have a bit kind of similar to the round towers and the brocks of Ireland and Scotland. You have a fantastic megalithic temple called a nuraghi. And in Sardinia, it's a small island. It's not a big island. There were 7,000 alone. I mean, that's what I mean. I think there was up to 7,000, 8,000 stone circles in the British Isles.
And we're down to 900.
Now we're down to, roughly speaking, about 900 surviving stone circles. Yeah. So a lot has been destroyed. So when you hear these people talking about lays and they've got the definitive map, they haven't, because the definitive map created by our ancestors can't be seen because they were sadly destroyed.
Thank you for that, Maria. Thank you for that. Costa, do you want to say something?
Yes. Yeah, I would like to ask Maria if she knows anything about the star forts, those kind of formations. If they have to do anything like a stone circle is a kind of initiation, or what was happening? Do you know?
Well, I don't. Again, it's all down to interpretation, how we interpret things. That's the key, and that's even for archaeologists. It's how you interpret something. Because in prehistoric times there was no written documents. Any author or researcher that feels that they can join dots can say what they were used for. It's really, we're only scratching the surface of our knowledge of what the ancients were doing in the landscape. And to be quite frank, I mean, I've hung around with lots of authors and top researchers, and I don't think one person ever has the answer to understanding even lays and things like that. You need a group of people with a lot of special skills. That's why Brian Forster, who I know has been on the show and with Karen and myself on a few occasions, he always takes a team with him to investigate sites. So he always has a geologist. He always has like a sensitive or whatever. He has a team of people. Because no one person has all the answers, and if you do, they're probably, and someone says they have all the answers to it, they're probably wrong.
And do you know something else, Maria? I messaged him yesterday or the day before, and I said to him, obviously you were coming on, and then I said, did you know that there was pyramids in castles here? And he said he didn't.
Well, Brian's speciality is Peru and Egypt, isn't it, and Easter Island. So when I met him in September, I think it was of last year. He'd been to Stonehenge once and West Kennet once before, I think. And this time when he went in with me, he said he really started to understand it, and he had quite a profound spiritual experience, is how he described it. So I think it's about coming back to places and understanding them. And each time you go to an ancient site, you will see, hear, feel something slightly different. So you get another interpretation of the site. So you're always learning. So that's why I say it's an ongoing investigation of what is really gone on in the landscape.
Costa, did you want to say something else?
About the pyramids in Egypt. You were talking before about the pyramids, and I like what you said, that they look much older and some later civilization built something on top. Do you think that it has to do with ancient Atlantis? Is there some kind of king or somebody in high knowledge came to Egypt after the destruction and continued something from there?
Yes, because the knowledge that you have in ancient civilizations and particular parts of the world did suddenly take off at particular times. So I do think there was an influence. I mean, you get some authors like Andrew Collins. who would say they're coming down from the north more,
Yeah.
coming down that way, or coming from Atlantis. I think there is a deep Atlantean connection with Ireland, because
Yeah.
when we look to the British Isles, the oldest monuments, the oldest stone circles that predate Avebury and Stonehenge by 1,000 or more years are in Ireland. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, if it was a researcher, I forget his name, he was saying that if you were in the Atlantic Ocean and you're a survivor of a deluge, or we get the picture, and you don't have any oars to maneuver yourself around that ocean, the current will take you to Sligo Bay in Ireland naturally. And in Sligo Bay in Ireland, you have wondrous ancient monuments that are very sophisticated. So I think definitely, Atlantean survivors, or as like they come from all other lost continents that are under the oceans that happened at the same time. I don't think there's just a few lost continents. I mean, we've got Dogger Islands, as they're called now, in between the landmass of England and Norway. There's a lot of evidence coming up from there that was a very ancient society living in where the North Sea is now, for example. So I see lots of ancient Atlantis civilization, so to speak.
Can I ask you something else as well? You believe Stonehenge is real, don't you? Just they didn't put it back right.
Well, when you look to the very first antiquarian drawings of Stonehenge, and then you look at it down from the 1500s to the present day, you can see which stones were leaning, which ones have been put up, and that type of thing. And one of the earliest accounts of Stonehenge comes from the 1200s. And on all of these accounts, you can build up a bit of a picture.
So which stones are wrong then? How many stones are wrong?
Well, what do you mean by wrong, Karen?
Put that wrong.
Well, I mean, some of the stones are still buried that haven't been put up. In fact, when you come to Stonehenge, if a stone didn't fit the picture that Richard Atkinson painted, and that's the picture we all think we know Stonehenge is because of one guy called Richard Atkinson, Professor Richard Atkinson. And he said you've got 30 on the outside, and you had 60 blue stones, then etc., etc. He said he drew it all out. So you've got a horseshoe shape, and you've got a horseshoe bluestone shape, and etc. That was his interpretation of it. But the stones that didn't fit into that, like one that had a bluestone that had a massive tongue in it, that fitted into the massive bluestone that's got a groove into it. Well, that didn't fit in the picture, so that got buried.
Yeah, there's also, they don't really talk about those funny shapes in the ground just off of it either, which you find all over the place. And even when you get to Avebury, where Silbury Hill is, there's Strawberry Hill, and there's other things going on, other arkings, other things. There's Woodhenge, and yeah, Avebury's quite amazing for a variety of things. Though Long Barrow.
Well, they're the surviving long barrows. And again, if you look to antiquarian reports, my goodness, there was much more magnificent barrows than West Kennet Long Barrow.
I have to say though, Marie, I went with Keith GoPro Flat Earth Derbies in the chat room. We went to Silbury Hill. In fact, about the week before you did, but I was a bit shocked because I've been to the Long Barrow before and a lot of it is collapsed now.
Well, I've got a funny tale about when they did those re-renovations of West Kennet. I sometimes believe Great Spirit puts me in the right place at the right time to ask the right questions. I just believe that. I was with two women from Sedona, and we were walking up to West Kennet Long Barrow, and it had all the scaffolding around it, and they were really upset. They'd come all of this way, and they wanted to go in. The so-called archaeologist was saying to me, "Oh no, you can't come behind the fence. It's this. We're moving the stones. We're re-renovating the roof. You can't come in. You can't come in." And basically said, "Please, please, please." And so they let us in. And in that back far chamber, I swear they were looking for something. That was not a normal looking archaeological dig, in my opinion. Then, when we get out, he says, would you like a little bit of an archaeological talk about the site? So I thought, well, yeah, he's done us a favour. We'll listen to him. And then he tells us that the stones, which are sarsen stone of West Kennet Longbow, were blue stones like Stonehenge. And I was arguing with him. I said, no, they're not. They're sarsen. And then I realised I didn't even think he was an archaeologist. No archaeologist would have said that they were blue stones. I don't know what he was doing there, but it was an official manner, and I think he was looking for something.
Oh, you mean he wanted to know what you knew?
No, I think he.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're back. It's all right.
Yeah. He was doing something in a non-archaeological way. I believe he was looking for some type of artifact, and he was pretending that he knew about the site, because that site does not contain blue stones, like he was informing myself and the two ladies from Sedona. So I don't know why he was there, but I think that was a bit of a guise putting all that together, to be honest.
I don't remember it being so collapsed before, the back bit. We walked on it. It just looked like, and they've got those stupid little glass window in the top now, which kind of ruins it, really.
Well, they made it a little bit darker and more atmospheric. They took the big skylight out, which I think was a bit of a good move. But the problem is, I mean, the scaffolding, well, a couple of weeks ago, there was that kind of cordoned off bit, because you get people that just go up there and smash the glass. So it's all and then it lets the water in.
Yeah,
So
they did. When we went up there, the little sky thing, it was already smashed.
Yeah, that's the problem. But look into the long lost monuments of the Avebury area. That's not that far from West Kennet Longbow. You had Millbarrow, and Millbarrow was gigantic. It was much, much bigger than West Kennet Longbow. It would have dwarfed it. And that unfortunately got broken up in the 1700s. And like a lot of the stone circles just north of Avebury, there was another 3 or 4 stone circles. Only one standing stone survives from one.
Right.
Where the M4 is, there was a stone circle literally on the just underneath the M4. That was an archaeological site, and the motorway just went over the top of it.
Are you under the thing with Silbury? Sorry, with Avebury Stone Circle, that there's another ring which got destroyed because the people built the houses in it with it? It's just the tale I've heard.
Well, there could have been a third circle just outside of the northern end, where what we've got called the Swindon Diamond Stone, because what Alexander Keeler uncovered in his archaeology in the 1920s was 2 stones that seemed to be forming a curvature. So there could have been a third stone circle there. But what the ancients did, you have a stone circle built in various phases, and they tinkered with the designs quite often. So they would move stones around quite a bit. And they did that at Avebury, and they did that at Stanton Drew. And these sites are kind of developing all the time. So I think, yeah, there could have been a stone circle there. I think Avebury also had 4 megalithic avenues, not the 2 that William Stukeley drew. And the archaeological community are looking for those in the near future.
Right. Well, that's something else I've learned today then. 4 avenues.
Yes, because each avenue had an entrance, and it's if you look for clues in the landscape by place names, field names, and that sort of thing, and you go up the Swindon Road, you have Avenue Farm, Avenue Field. So that's they're clues that, maybe in the kind of medieval times that was known to have been the avenue, which got broken up. For a lot of the stones at West Kennet, Longbarrow and Avebury didn't just go for building material in the houses, it went to make rubble for the road.
But they were able to, in those days, move great big stones, weren't they?
Oh, I mean, one of the heaviest megaliths in Great Britain is the Cove Stone at Avebury. That's huge, and that weighs, over 100 tons. And then if you go to East Riding in Yorkshire, you have this gigantic megalith, like a huge monolith, the Redstone. It's massive. It's actually the largest and heaviest megalith in England. The Coaststone comes close, but the difference with the Yorkshire standing stones is that they're all dressed, meaning they've been smoothed off. And what I find very interesting about the Redstone, gigantic monolith, it's in a churchyard. So it was literally a pagan site, completely Christianized. But what they did in the Victorian era, they capped the stone with lead on the top of it. Okay? So it's got like this little lead hat on of it that literally doesn't allow it to transmit its energy so much.
Right.
So I think that was all part of, the changeover of pagan ideas to the Christianity ideas, and the Victorian era they capped that stone and kind of
pyramids are capped, and also really if you look at it, if you took that tower off of the Tor at Glastonbury, that's capped as well.
Yes, I mean they're examples of the interference with the energy flow. That's the and if the Redstone was put back and that lead cap removed, like the Devil's Arrows, not far from the Redstone, then I think that you would have a much more healthier, vibrant community there.
Anyway, Maria, we've been going on about lots of other things, but you came on to talk about, what's your book about?
Well, the Rollright ring, it's a new view of the Rollright ring. It literally looks at all of the different types of earth energy, megalithic energy, healing points, and the experiments that have been done over previous years at the Rollright ring, because there are some amazing things that were discovered. I mean, one master dowser called Tom Graves, for example, wonderful chap. He did quite a bit of pendulum dowsing at the Rollright ring. So anyone can do this. You just take a pendulum, you put it over the top of a stone, definitely like in the near middle of the stone is a little bit more helpful. It will get a faster response. And you just let that pendulum do its thing, and it might go around and round and round, say 10 times. But when it goes back into its linear swing, backwards and forwards, it will start to swing in the opposite direction. Count how many swings it does, and say it does, for example, 20. Then it will stop and go backwards and forwards again, and it will go 20 times in the opposite direction. And Tom Graves called that the polarity of the stone, but he never really said what caused that, what can cause the pendulum to do that. It was just what was an observation, a very wonderful observation. But if we look to telephone engineers of the turn of the last century, when they were really kind of pioneers of the telecommunications we have inherited today, then they noticed that in the ground where cables went, this current, they called it a parasitic current, would enter the cable line, and it would go one way for 30 seconds or 3 minutes or sometimes 24 hours, and then revert back in the opposite direction. And like these relay switches to stop these earth voltages interfering with the early cables. And what I think is going on at Rollright, it is in a location where you've got a lot of different types of energy, and you've got incredible earth voltages that kind of influence the stone and give it these pulsations that you get. And even if you put your hand above one of the stones, you might feel a pulse, kind of like, literally a kind of as if someone's got a pen and pushed it slightly against your hand, where sensitive people can feel these earth voltages. So you can really interact and explore the energies of the Rollright ring and have a bit of fun doing that. Now, if we say, as archaeologists do, and it's on the notice board at Rollright, the tallest stone is stone number 1. and the count is clockwise, okay, for the numbering system of the stones, and you come to roughly about the like 20th stone along, you'll notice that that stone kind of is offset and is pointing towards the Whispering Knights, okay? It's literally offset. It's not forming a neat circle, it's offset. You always get an offset stone in a stone circle. Avebury has it, actually. So you'll get it facing in the opposite direction and not like neatly round forming a circle. Now, what the energies of a stone circle do with the form energy, the manifestation energy I mentioned earlier, if you imagine that it goes round and round and round, and then it spins off to target the next megalithic standing stone or long barrow front megalith, it kind of creates this linear beam of this massive amount of energy going through the landscape, which we have tested for, and it's a very strong electrical DC currents that is going through the landscape. So a stone circle will generate this type of energy, spin energy, because it spins round and round and round. But another fascinating fact about the Rollright ring, it was studied by Don Robbins. He was an archaeologist as well, but he was, very open-minded, and he did a lot of experiments at Rollright. And he heard somebody just saying in passing that they took a bat detector, for high ultrasound noise, and they noticed what they thought was coming from the stones at Rollright. So he went out and got some equipment and started to test Rollright for ultrasound. And what he concluded after many experiments was that, especially around the time of the spring equinox, and we're coming up to that, it's around about March the 21st, Rollright comes alive, because the ultrasound, that you can't hear it, certain animals can, is being generated by every single stone. But instead of the ultrasound going into the center of the stone circle, which you think would probably happen, it isn't. What was discovered was the ultrasound is going away from the stone circle, as if irrigating the land around it with this ultrasound occurrence. Also, what was found at the spring equinox at the Rollright stones using infrared photography, a very strange, hazy cloud was filmed above the King's Stone, which is on the other side of the road than the Rollright ring. And above the Rollright ring itself was another strange, hazy cloud. So it seems that this stone circle really does become active round about the time of the spring equinox. And other standing stones have been, and circles and avenues, been found to release ultrasound at particular times of the year. What's going on there? What did our ancestors, did they know about that energy? I think they did. I think they were prehistoric physicists that were acting on all of these different types of energies for maybe for free energy, maybe for healing purposes, because you can have healing with acoustic sounds, like was shown with the blue stones. So we have all of these different types of things occurring at this ancient site. And then if you go down the Spook Road and then you're heading towards the main road, basically, and let's say you've walked about 50 paces or so and you're heading up the road, then you hit this naturally occurring energy point that releases gamma radiation into the landscape. You get some researchers that say that could have been the basalt in the road, which it could possibly be. But on other occasions, when it was looked at what sort of radiation it was, it does seem to be a hot spot there. So we've got ultrasound, we've got radiation going on at the spring equinox. But when you go to the recumbent stone circles of Scotland, in Aberdeenshire, for example, a recumbent stone circle means that it's got like an altar. It's got two standing stones tall and one horizontal. And that forms a false horizon line where you can see the moon rise at particular times of its photonic cycle. forming that false horizon line. Fantastic stone circles. But what they found there was radiation levels flared up at times of the moon's botanic cycle, like I mentioned from the get-go at Rollright, botanic cycle integrated into the avenue there, that they found that these huge flare-ups would happen outside of the stone circle of radiation levels, but inside the stone circle it was quiet and there was no radiation. So that's inexplicable why all of that happens. And in my own investigations into stone circles at the sanctuary, which is a ruinous part of Avebury that was found by an archaeologist called Maud Cunnington, and she depicted where the former stones and posts were with concrete rectangles or cylinder shapes representing the timbers. The radiation levels I discovered there with Rodney Hale were intense in the middle of the stone circle. And bear in mind, the stones are no longer there. They're just markers now. And if you go outside of the stone circle, the markers, then it dips back to its normal background radiation. So you can take everything away from a stone circle. You can rape it of its stones. You can pull out the posts. The energies still behave the same. So if we learn to kind of understand these energies, I think we can find all of the lost sites, then make an accurate lay map, then make an accurate earth energy assumption of how these monuments interacted with one another. Hello?
Sorry, I forgot I muted myself. I was talking away to you. Maria, are there any mounds near these stone circles?
Yes, I mean, that's the thing. You always get a landscape, a ceremonial landscape. You don't just get a few monuments together. So yes, the Kingstone could have been part of a long mound. That's yet to be established fully. And there's lots of round barrows around the area. But because immediately outside of the Rollright Ring, you have an agricultural, cornfields, etc., and all of the mounds were destroyed. But Oxfordshire has an immense...
Does this frustrate you that so many have been destroyed, or that people don't really have any idea what any of these things are? I mean, you might not know everything, but like they know nothing, and they believe those plaques.
I know it is frustrating, and this is why I think that the more ancient lost sites that are found in research, that is very, very, very important, rather than just focusing on what you can see and drawing lines between them, because you've missed a whole lot out. It could have been one off to the left hand side, one off to the right hand side.
Well, that ley lines are man-made. They walk them. The people are making them.
Yeah, there's a lot of with ley lines. There's different camps saying different things, basically different schools of thoughts. I mean, John Michell, one of the top geomancers, the late John Michell, he suggested that they were probably man-made because they face a celestial event, like the sun at the rising sun of the summer solstice, or at the Avebury Lay. He pointed out.
Do you think that they're part of a great big? If we've got the Nazca lines, well, over there, that they're in they just haven't got grass and things like that on them. Do you think that's what the ley lines are? It's just we're on a great big Nazca line, the whole thing. It's just we can't see them. There's hills, trees, houses, buildings, destroyed lots of it now.
Well, absolutely, quite possibly. But I think a monument that could be likened to the Nazca lines that no longer exist anymore in England, well, there's only traces of them, are the Cursors monuments, and these what's called ditch bank markers. And what I think the archaeologists have misunderstood, they call them ranch boundaries. It's just an archaeological name for a massive monument that snakes through the landscape, and I think they were like the Nazca lines.
Just got and also there's other things going on. I mean, I think it's all like this is just as important. I was looking up the Rainbow Mountains and they're in China. And then it suddenly clicked in my mind that here in the UK, on the little island of the Isle of Wight at the bottom, we went there, you know, especially as kids, we could go and dig it ourselves. Don't think you can do that now. But then I was noticing that as the different colours went up, there was grass on the top. So basically, if you could like have gamma ray eyes or whatever it is, you'd be able to see all the different layers and colours of the land below. It's all different. So that, all that with different properties, it must play something.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the minerals in the land are very, very important, for sure. But one type of earth energy, it's quite rare in a way, and it's formed. In a nutshell, I'm going to very simplify this for the audience because nobody wants to come back, 15-minute talk about something. Basically, if we see the sun releases its energy in a color spectrum, doesn't it? When we see that with the rainbow, we see reds through to violets, don't we? That's the color spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay. Many decades ago, French master dowsers, they really investigated the color spectrum of the sun, and they realized that coming through the color spectrum of the sun were hidden colors. And these hidden colors were what they called, you know, like infra-whites and infrareds and ultraviolets, but also infra-black and negative green, which is opposite the positive green. And that's when a beam of light has to go through something. But anyway, in a nutshell, you have the negative green, and that is very, very, very powerful. So powerful that one of the team called Rollright with de Belizal in France, he filled an object so full of the negative green, he was found 1 week later completely mummified in his laboratory, but with no smell of death around him. And these French diviners found these devices.
When were they doing this, Maria?
Sorry?
When were they doing this? About what year?
Well, in the 1940s to the 1960s, you see, they went to Egypt because the French and the English, we were no better, ransacking what we want, taking calendars, and you know the Americans took an obelisk. But they looked into some of the Valley of the Kings, and they found this particular pendulum device. It's not a pendulum like you use pendulums today. It's a device, and you find them all over the wall paintings, carved into it. So you use a pendulum device, okay? And I give courses on this, actually. I've got one on Saturday at the Avebury Hen Shop, and I do them online. And they found these devices, and then they went to their laboratory and they raised the frequency of negative green. Yeah, it's an all-powerful thing. But they went on to make this, and I don't recommend, if you do not know what you're doing with the Egyptian pendulums, please do not buy them, because one of them, the Osiris pendulum, is based on the King's Pyramid, and unless you keep it in a Faraday cage, you will end up ill. And some people don't realize that they've got an Osiris pendulum. It's a device. But anyway, they realized that these devices were very powerful. So based on one that they found in the Valley of the Kings out of sandstone, they changed the dimension rather of it slightly, keeping to the original design, as it were. And I don't advocate testing on animals. You know, I buy all my products from Lush and Body Shop. I don't advocate tests on animals. But they knew that what you could do if you manipulate the negative green, in some cases the positive green as they call it, it's got 2 vertical waves. One goes up vertical and one goes horizontal. If you can suspend that, you can suspend the life force of anything. Yeah.
Negative green.
The negative green. I mean, you've got so much junk on YouTube about the negative green. I was someone asked me to watch it, and I just think it's nuts. It's nuts what they're saying. If you go back to the original manuscripts of these master diviners, dowsers, it's astonishing if you take all the myths away from it, and it sounds mythical in its own right. So what they did, they got their pendulum device and they suspended the life force of snails. Yeah. Now, if you suspend the life force of something, you have to protect it. You don't want entities and things coming in it. So you do a process. Well, and then they put the life force back into it. Now, in the 1960s, their dowsing methods were frowned upon because you had the psychic dowsers coming in with pendulums and saying, "Oh, all you got to do is ask it a question, yes or no," and information dowsing took off. But prior to the 60s, it was far more scientific. And there was one dowser. He was trained by the French diviners, and he suspended the life force of a cancer cell in his wife, who was diagnosed with cancer. And the way these dowsers saw it was, you need to suspend the life force and take it out if it's cancerous, for example. So it was right up in the 1960s that dowsing was a real active science. And the negative green was really being looked at as potential free energy, for example, and for curative aspects. And I'm one of the few dowsers in the country that have been trained to find the negative green in the earth, not the sun. When we talk about what they were doing, that's the solar living life force of the sun. Okay, it's kind of proton consciousness. In the earth does the same, as above and so below. So the earth emits as well, in part and in places, negative green. And that's a very powerful place. You do not need to interact with it for a long time. You don't need an hour therapy for the negative green. You go there, and there's a place in Rollright where you go there, you go there for a couple of minutes, no more than 3 minutes, you get out again. And that's known to be quite curative. The negative green as well, it can mummify anything if you put it into a particular environment. It's a very strange.
Hello?
Hi.
Sorry, just every now and again you just sort of taper off and then you go, hello, you're back again. Sorry, it's just that last sentence again.
Oh gosh, what was that? What was I saying? I think it was about, the negative green can, in certain circumstances, mummify and shrink the life force away. In other circumstances, it can give the life force. Now, when you come to the it's astonishing. I have only ever seen, and I'm not going to repeat this story on air, but I have seen 3 master dowsers manipulate the negative green and allowed the life force to come back in one incident. And I have been trained to find it in the landscape. That's the thing I can recognize the negative green. Most animals shy away from it because you can't be around it for too long. It's not good for your cells. But if you're around it for short pieces of time, I think you can self-heal. And has been proved by the French diviners, nonetheless. And it's information about this is in one of my books, Divine in Ancient Sites. Got a whole section on the colour of certain lays, because when people talk about ley lines, what most people fail to inform anyone, unless they're a really good geomancer. And to be a really good geomancer, you have to be in harmony with your own body. You can't be overweight, you can't overeat, you can't overdrink. That's what makes a good dowser as well. It's about living in harmony with nature and with the landscape. But all of these lays we see as a line. Well, they're not. They're interacting with the sun energy, they're interacting with the earth energy, and they have an abundance of colour. Yeah. And depending on the colour frequency, this is how European master dowsers see it. You can interpret how people are going to behave above the frequency, the colour frequency of a ley rather than the ley line. And so, there's very few trained British dowsers in the high frequency colour dowsing. I'm proud to be one of them. And I've taught certain people from certain societies, dowser societies in the UK, But we need to kind of move on from the idea of just a line. Do you see what I mean? It's a multi-dimensional color frequency that relates to the sun and earth in this alchemic marriage. And when you get particular ingredients coming together, wow, then you have immense power and energy, and especially if it's negative green.
Something else I've learnt today then, negative green.
But like I said, there's a lot of nonsense on YouTube. In fact, one PowerPoint presentation is dangerous. Yeah, you unless you know what you're doing, you will end up ill. The French diviners, incidentally, said it's the cure and cause of cancer. Now, this is another thing that they see, and you might not agree with this, but how Master Dowsers see the chakra system and how occultists see the chakra system is a little bit different than the New Age community. The New Age community or holistic healers will see the base chakra as being red, yeah, and it goes up in the colour of the rainbow, doesn't it? The colour of the chakras, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, in all color systems through the electromagnetic light spectrum, you cannot have one color by itself. You have a dominant color. So you could have a dominant color in the ley line, and the dominant color in my base chakra is red, but it has negative green and all of the other colors, the esoteric colors of the sun and earth. Do you see what I mean? But that color is dominant. And that's how they see the chakra system, as a dominant color prevails. And when you use the Egyptian pendulums, you learn how to relate to particular color frequencies, because particular shapes can generate particular color frequencies. So yeah, like I say, these pendulums are devices. And you look at the King's Chamber and you look to where certain things are placed, and you get an angle. What the French diviners noticed was a particular angle, you have the positive aspect of the life force coming into that King's Chamber.
Maria, how did they find that negative green in the sun then? Colour?
You do an experiment, yeah. If you ever do filming in the landscape, we could do this, Karen. You get an experiment up, and you have to get a kind of circle, yeah, and you have cardinal points on it. Okay, this is what they discovered. You have the cardinal points, and you have the color of the spectrums coming in, and they come in an order of a sequence. Yeah. So the red color spectrum is a long wave of light, isn't it? It's a long wave, and the violet is a more shorter wave, isn't it? So you have long waves, you have short waves, and by repeating this experiment, which to say on air, basically you get this sphere and you get this circle and particular colours coming at a particular angle.
Sorry, Maria, you're going quiet. You're coming back now.
Oh, I don't know why this keeps happening. I really don't. But yeah, you have particular shapes, Karen, that can tell you what colour comes in and the amount of colour that's coming in that registers its frequency.
But negative green doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, it has two polarities. One is called magnetic and one is electric. One is horizontal, that's positive, it's a carrier wave. That's a positive aspect of it. But the negative.
How do you see it then? You need your dowsing rods.
No, you have a dowsing device of the color spectrums, but you can only relate to the color spectrums if you've interacted with them in the land. It's an initiation process. So with Ra in Egypt, these pendulum devices believed you went through an initiation process. So I can't work with magnetic yellow if I've never experienced yellow in the landscape or in the esoteric colors of the sun. So it's kind of like a learning process. It's a bit like driving a car. If you know how to do the gears, but you don't have clutch control, you're not going to go very far, are you? So with Egyptian pendulum dowsing, you have to do a process and you have to learn the clutch control and parallel parking. Well, once you've kind of know all of that, then you can heal people and get the body to self heal with the Isis pendulum, especially one of the kind of softer ones. And if anyone looks up the Isis pendulum online. Make sure. Sorry.
You said that something happened to people though, that if they put too much of this colour.
Oh yeah. If you don't know what you're doing, then it can be quite dangerous. But the ISIS pendulum, with a little bit of training, that's quite easy. But you must buy the pendulum that comes in 2 parts. If it doesn't come in 2 parts, oh my God, put it in a Faraday cage, or you put it in tin foil. And it's really responsible. In New Age shops, I see crystal pendulums, which are the ISIS pendulum, and it's not in 2 bits. They're dangerous, absolutely highly dangerous. Some people just do not know what they're doing with these ancient devices, and they're sold as pretty crystals in a New Age shop, looking all nice, but really they're generating far too much colour that can be detrimental to your physical body. Not good.
No. Well, I've learnt a lot today, Maria. Maria, we've been going now for a bit longer. I just wondered, where can people buy your book?
Yeah, that's good. If they could come direct to me through my website, that would be a wonderful thing. And my website is www.theaveburyexperience.co.uk. You can get it on Amazon, but Amazon have blocked my seller account again.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know why. And if I do sell to Amazon direct, they take 60% from me. So if you go through my website, then you'll be supporting my work and not Amazon.
whoa.
Yeah, that is true. If you're a small publisher or you sell on Amazon, it's called Amazon Advantage, not just like a seller account, because they've locked me out of my seller account. So I have to go through Amazon Advantage.
That's a lot of money though, isn't it?
Yeah, actually got to pay postage and packaging on top of that.
Okay, everybody, you want my there you go. Nimble Horse has put your the aveburyexperience.co.uk in the chat room. So thank you, Nimble Horse, and also it's in the description.
Well, yeah. Thanks for that, Nimble Horse. That's welcome.
Costa, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Maria. It was a very nice hangout. Learn a lot of things from you. I hope you have any news soon about the DNA test, and let us know how it went. Okay, thanks for tonight.
Oh, you're welcome, Costa. Thanks for having me back. And if I do hear anything about that, I will inform you all. It's great. It'll be an ongoing project for us.
Well, we obviously today was to talk a bit about your book, but we've talked about everything. It's always very interesting listening to you, Maria, and hopefully you'll come back and see us soon, won't you?
Yes, it'll be a pleasure, Karen. It'll be a pleasure.
Yeah, it's really nice. Anyway, yeah, I'm over the hangout about me. Everybody knowing my past life experience. But I have to say that nearly everything you said was actually me today, except the warrior one. I'm not sure about that one. It wouldn't surprise me though, because we end up, you're a strong woman, aren't you? I end up having to be a strong woman.
Yeah. Boudica strong, Karen. Boudica strong. Yeah.
Anyway, I really enjoyed that, and hopefully people learnt a bit more anyway about our history. Is and there's a lot of people into the sort of mud flood, or just basically they're just lying about the age of the buildings and like how half of them are underground. The windows, the bottom floor of a house is under the ground.
I know. It's ludicrous. Yeah.
But anyway, it's been really great, and thank you. I know you'll come back. That's really great, and thank you so much, chat room. What's today? Tuesday. Yeah, we're back Thursday. So see you all then, and Costa, Maria, and chat room.
Cheerio.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.